Hey everybody, this is Jennifer, and today I'm going to show you how to make this filigree pendant. And this stone is Charoite, and it is like a dark grapey purple with light purple running through it and some black running through it. And if you have a purple lover in your life, they would absolutely love something made out of Charoite. All the tools that I use and love and that I have tried out and used in general will be listed in the description box below. So use that as a reference point for if you are needing tools or needing to buy some new tools. Use that as a reference point, and that'll help you out with finding some good quality tools that'll last you a long time. And also hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification button. We just hit 600 subscribers, which I am extremely excited about because we just hit 500 not long ago. And when we get to 1,000, I'm planning on doing a giveaway. And also hit the thumbs up button. That helps my channel out a lot. And it also lets me know that you're enjoying my content, and it lets me know what content you're enjoying, and it lets me know to create more of that type of content. And so that does help me out with planning my filming schedule and planning my future videos. If you have any requests for videos, put that down in the comment section down below. And also in the comment section, I've asked a couple times for people to tell me where they're from. So tell me where you're from, because I've only had a couple people answer. And I'd like to know where y'all are watching from. And then also let me know what level of jewelry maker you are, but also help me with knowing what kind of content to put out, because this piece is more of an intermediate piece. And just keep watching for the tutorial, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, today I wanted to do a wire wrap of this piece of Charoite. It's one I've wrapped before, but I didn't like the way it turned out, so I wanted to redo it. And for this wire wrap, I'm going to be using 21 gauge square in silver by Parawire, and then I'm going to be using some 28 gauge round in silver, some 26 gauge round in silver, and some 21 gauge half round in silver. Now to start, I want to start by measuring my stone, and I'm just going to put it here, and then I like to roll it up, and then I like to roll it over, and then I like to roll it up. And so this stone then comes to it almost about 3.5 inches after I do that. So I want to add about 7 inches to that. So I think I want to do about 11 inches of wire. And I'm going to do 4 pieces of the square. And if I measure my stone like this, it comes to a little over 1.5 inches. So I'm going to straighten out my 21 gauge square, and I'm going to cut 4 pieces of it. Okay, so I've cut my 4 pieces of 11 inches of 21 gauge square. And you could also do this in round wire if you don't have square wire, or you just want to use round wire. So now I'm just taking a piece of scrap wire, and I just want to get a good wrap around my stone with it, because I want to get a good measurement, because I want to weave around the pendant and I want it to fit. Now I just need to make sure it's sitting in there in the bottom. I'm sorry if I'm a little sniffy today. My allergies are really getting in full force for this year. Okay, So I'm just going to make sure that this measurement is correct and that it fits tight, because I want to make sure my weave fits really nicely around it. And this is the one chance that I have to really fix this part of it. So I want it to be right. Okay, so that looks like if I do a weave around that, it's gonna fit in there really nicely. So now I'm just gonna fold this part out. So I'm just straightening this inner part just so I can weave the right amount in the middle of this. I think I cut these more than 11 inches, which I know is more, yeah, I did 12 inches. So what I want to do is find out how many inches this is, and this comes to about 4.5 inches. So I want to figure out where I want my weave to be, like to start, and where I want it to end. I have enough room in the back to do kind of a decorative closure. So I'm just going to kind of center this on here and just kind of figure out where I need to start at. And I taped my hands up with this Nexcare tape, which is this real thick foamy tape, just to protect my hands from the wire. I always do that whenever I weave. And it just protects my hands and fingers against blisters. So I'm going to take my 26 gauge wire. Okay, so now I have a pretty good idea of where I need to start with the weave, but I'm also going to check it after I get it started just a little bit in case I need to slide it down or slide it over. But I'm going to start out by going behind this wire with my 26 gauge, and I'm working off the spool. If you hear me sniffling and stuff, I'm not sick. I just have really, really bad allergies, and pollen season is really starting in Georgia. So I'm going to go ahead and attach this wire by wrapping it around a couple times. So I've wrapped that 26 gauge wire around twice, and now I'm just going to press those wraps together, and then I'm just going to pull this piece forward just to get it out of my way. And if you're a beginner wire weaving, I would recommend using 28 gauge wire, and I'm going to be doing 2 wraps around each wire, and I would recommend with 28 gauge wire that you do 3, but I'm going to wrap around this wire 2 times. And then I'm going to come up in between the wire. And I don't want to get too much wire coming off my spool at one time, because I don't want to have kinks in my wire. And if you have a lot of wire coming off your spool, you're more likely to get kinks in it. So now I'm just going to add this next wire. And I'm just going to go up around the second and third wire, and I'm going to go around it twice. And with wire weaving, I always find the most difficult part just to be getting going with it and getting it started. But once you get it started, that's actually pretty easy. So I'm just pulling this down nice and tight, and then I'm going to add my 4th wire. And I do want to have my wires separated out a little bit, especially at the end, but I don't want to have them separated out so much that it's going to make my pattern look all wonky. So I'm just going to wrap around these top 2 wires twice. And then I'm going to come up between the top wire and the 3rd wire. And now I'm just going to go back down. I'm going to go over the 2nd and 3rd wire twice. And you just want to try to make sure your weave stays as neat as possible. Now I'm coming up between the 2nd and 3rd wire, and I'm just pulling it down against that. And you want to keep a nice tension on your wire, but you don't want to have so much tension on your wire that it breaks. And 28 gauge is more likely to break than any of the others because of the thinness of it. And I have broken 28 gauge wire, and I've broken 26 even. So I'm just gonna, I wrap that around the bottom 2 wires. So now I'm just coming up in between those 2. So I've got this little triangle design going on. So I just want to make sure all my wraps are nice and neat, like that. And now what I want to do is I'm going to measure against my little guide and see, I want to try to have the same amount of wire on either end. So I do need to slide it down some. So I'm just going to pull it and slide it a little bit. Let's see if that's better. And I'm going to pull it and slide it down just a little bit more. There. Okay, and that looks like I have about even on either end. So I'm going to show you this weave a couple more times, and then I'm going to weave this full length. So if you leave yourself a little bit of a channel down here, that can help, but I also will reach my fingers up in between the wires. So since I'm between wire number 1 and 2, my next wire to do is around 2 and 3. So I'm just going to go around those twice. And then I'm going to come up between wire 2 and 3. And I'm going to use the little tension that I have on my wire to pull it down towards the other wires, so they're nice and tight and compressed. And so now I'm going over the top 2 wires. And I'm going to do that twice. So I'm going over each wire twice. And then I'm coming up on the second wraparound, I'm coming up in between the 2 wires, just like that. So now I'm going to go back down. So now I'm going to go over the middle 2 wires. And now I'm coming up in between the 2 middle wires. And once you get going with your weave, you can actually move fairly quickly, and it doesn't take that long to weave once you get going. And so now I'm going to go over the bottom 2 wires. And now on the second one, I want to wrap it. I want to come back up between the two wires, and I'm just going to kind of pull down in here nice and tight, and I'm just going to make that nice and snug. So I'll show you this weave just a couple more times to make sure you get it. But this is a pretty simple basic weave. So I'm in between wires 1 and 2. So now I'm going to go over wires 2 and 3. And after going over it the second time, and I'm just going to come up between the wires. And I'm going to pull down kind of tight. And now I'm going up over wires 3 and 4 twice. And I'm coming up between wires 3 and 4. And now I'm going over the 2 middle wires 2 times. And now on the second time, I'm going to come up between the 2 middle wires. And I'm just going to pull that down to tighten up my weave. And now I'm going to go around the bottom 2 wires. It's like I wrapped around once, and then I'll go a second time, and then on the second time, I'm coming up between the 2 wires so I can change directions. But I'm just going to pull that down. And in a minute, I'll show you what the weave is looking like. So I'm just going to go over the middle 2 wires 2 times. And then come up in between the middle wires. And then go up over the 2 top wires 2 times. And then I'm going to come up between the 2 top wires. So now to go down, I'm in between the top wire and the third wire. So now I'm going to go over the 2 middle wires twice. And then up in between the 2 middle wires. And I'm going to pull that nice and tight and compress the weave with the wire. And I'm just trying to make sure my wires don't get crossed. And now I'm going to go over the bottom wire and the second wire. And I'm going to go around. And then this time when I come up, I'm going to go in between the 2 wires. And I will do that one more time. And then I'll show you what it looks like. And then I'll let you do it on your own. So I'm in between wire 1 and 2. So now I'm going to go over wire 2 and 3, or the 2 middle wires, twice. And on the second time, I'm going to come up in between the 2 middle wires. And I'm going to use this wire and my nail also to put some tension on it and to make it compress. And now I'm going to go over the 2 top wires, and I'm trying to keep my wires from getting too far apart. So I just wanted to press them together a little bit. So I'm going to go over those twice. So now after I've gone up over that, I'm going to come up in between the 2 top wires. And now I'm in between the top wire and the third wire. So now I'm going to go over the middle 2 wires. And these wires are crossing a little bit, so I'm just gonna separate them. And so now I'm just gonna come up in between those two wires. And now I'm in between the middle two wires, and now I'm coming down over the bottom two wires. And just remember, if you're using 28 gauge, do this 3 times just to make up for the difference in the wire thickness. And so now I'm coming down over it a second time. So now I'm coming up in between wires 1 and 2. And this is what our weave pattern is looking like. And so I'm going to go ahead and do this the rest of this length, and I will be back. And now I'm coming up between wires 1 and 2. If you're using 28 gauge, do the same thing. Just do it every 3 times. Go over the wire 3 times, and then on the 3rd time come up in between the wires. So I'll show you one more time. So I'm going up over wires 2 and 3. And I'm going up over wires 2 and 3 again. And now I'm coming in between wires 2 and 3. And now I'm going over wires 3 and 4. That's 1 time. And I'm going over wires 3 and 4 a 2nd time. And now I'm coming up between wires 3 and 4, and I'm going to pull it down and give it a nice little tug. And now I'm just going to make sure my wires aren't crossed, and I'm trying to keep my wires nice and tight and keep my weave pulled nice and tight so my weave stays even all the way down. So now I'm going over wires 3 and 2, and going over it once. And I'm going over wires 3 and 2 again. And I'm coming up between wires 3 and 2. And now I'm going over wires 2 and 1. So now I'm coming over wires 2 and 1 again. And now I'm going to go up between wires 2 and 1. And so this is what the weave is looking like. But I will be back when I'm done with this weave. Okay, so I've woven this for the length of my little guide. And I'm just pressing this wire out a little bit just to make sure it's flat. So I'm just making sure this wire is as straight as I can get it. And I'm going to go ahead and finish off the ends of my weaving wire. So I'm just going to go around this bottom wire just a couple wraps and then come up in between there. And now I'm just going to take my wire cutters and I'm going to cut right down in the middle. I'm going to take my Xuron bent nose pliers and I'm spreading my wires out just a little bit just so I can get in here. And I'm just going to kind of twist and press that wire down. And I want to make sure it's pressed closed together as well. And make sure I feel it. I feel a little bit of a sharp edge. So I'm just going to kind of press that in. And I think I also want to move this little weave in just a tiny, tiny bit. That feels smooth now. And so now I'm going to do the same thing on the other end. So I'm just coming up right in between those 2 wires. And if you work off the spool, you actually waste a lot less wire than if you were to just keep taking long lengths of wire, and it's also just a lot easier. But I'm just going to spread these wires out so I can get in here with my bent nose pliers. And I'm just going to grab that little end. I'm just trying to get in here as best I can and just kind of twist that loop around. And I'm going to try to pinch these closed a little bit. And I don't feel anything sharp there. So that's good. So now what I want to do is I want these wires to be really straight. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to straighten each wire. And I'm just going to bend it down gently so I can get to the next wire. Okay, so now I'm just going to bend those back up, and I'm going to go over those all with my wire straighteners. Now this end that I started on really needs some straightening out. So I'm just going to go ahead and straighten out this. Let me get my other nylon jaw pliers. I think they're a little bit more narrow. But I'm just going to get in here and I'm going to straighten this wire out. And I'm going to straighten this end. And these nylon jaw pliers right here I got through Parawire, and they're actually Parawire brand. And then I want to get in here and straighten this one out. And then I want to straighten this one out. And now I'm just going to kind of bring them all back together like that. So now I want to get my wires formed around my stone. And I want to put the wire ends where they finished off. I want that part to go down. But now I need to center this on my stone as best as I can. That looks pretty centered. So now I'm just going to start bending it and getting some shape into it. And now when I get to the top of this, I want to have my wires all interlocking. So I'm going to take that out, and I'm just going to take this very back wire right here, and I'm going to put it in the back. And I'm going to take this back wire and put it right there. And I'm going to take this wire, and then this next wire to the back, and then this second wire to the front. Making sure I don't get my wires crisscrossed. So I'm going to take the second wire from the front, and we'll take the second wire from the front on the other side, and then so this is what you should be seeing with your wires. It should be crisscrossed into each other and like that. So now I'm going to place this back around my stone, and I'm just going to pull this around on both sides. Just making sure I really get it tight around this stone, because it's really important to keep that weave really, really tight. And so now I'm going to hold my stone in here the best that I can do it. And I'm going to start by taking these two back wires, and I'm going to pull this one this way, and I want to pull this one this way. And I'm trying to get that to bend down right there at the top. And I'm just going to try to push this in towards each other at the top just a little bit better. but I'm going to pull this really tight, and I'm going to pull this side really tight to try to really hold it together. And I'm actually going to grab my pliers and pull it so I know that side's really tight, and then pull this side so I know that side's really tight. And I'm going to leave those kind of like that. And now these next wires, I'm going to pull this one around like that. And I'm going to pull this one around like that. And now these two wires right here, I want to be my bail. So I'm going to take my stone out for now. And so I'm just going to bend these up just like that. And I'm going to take some wire straighteners, and I'm going to straighten these out again so my bail will be nice and straight. And I'm just going to pull these wires down out of my way while I do this. So now I'm just going to take some of my 21 gauge half round wire. In half round wire, it has a side that's flat and a side that's round. And you always want the flat side to go against your wires. So now I'm just going to wrap my half round wire with the flat side down around to start my bail. And I'm wrapping this one piece down as far as I can get it on the bail. And then I'm going to leave a little piece that I can tuck in at the end. And I just want to make sure these wires stay laying flat to each other. And I just want to also make sure that the round part of the half round wire stays laying flat against my piece. So I'm going to guide it with my thumb. And I'm just going to turn the piece slowly in order to get an even bail. Just guiding the wire the whole time with my thumb. And I think that's about as far up as I want to go with my bail. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Xuron Flatness pliers, and I like these because it presses everything more evenly. So I'm just going to gently press it just a little bit to flatten this out, just a tiny bit. I don't want to press too hard because I don't want to make it get out of shape either. But I find these work better than my Tweezer nose pliers for this. But this just gives your bail a nice flat look to it. So now I'm just going to take this little piece of wire and I'm just going to tuck it into this little tiny opening that's right there. I'm hoping it'll come through. Let me straighten it out a little bit. I'm just going to work that through there. find bent nose pliers the easiest to do something like this with. So I'm just going to pull that piece of wire right there. I'm going to pull it all the way up to where my bail starts. And I want to make sure it's neat in the front. So I'm going to press this up. So I'm going to pull that up, and I'm going to pull this in the back nice and tight. I'm going to trim this little tiny piece of wire off right down at the base of the bail. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bail and I'm just going to bend it over my finger. Like that. So now I'm going to take this half round wire that's coming off my bail and I'm going to wrap it around this front and try to cover that little area up. And this will also help secure it down. So now I'm just pulling it really, really tight. And I'm just going to wrap it until everything is covered. And now I'm going to stick it behind this little part of the bail right here. This little tiny hole. Right under the wires that I just wrapped. But there's just this little tiny opening. It's hard to see. It's hard to get through. And sometimes holding your piece at a different angle will help. Like that helped me get behind that little bail. In between that spot. So I'm just going to pull that tight right there. I'm just going to pull this wire up. I'm going to pull this as tight as I can without breaking it. I'm going to open up my bail just a little bit to give it a nice shape. And I'm going to trim this wire way down in there. I'm just going to press that wire flat. Okay, and that feels good. So now with these two front wires right here, what I want to do is I'm just going to take my tweezer nose pliers. I'm just going to grab the end of it and I'm just going to twist. And that's the nice thing about square wire is you can make it into twisted wire, which can add a little bit of dimension to your piece. And you can't do that with round wire. So I'm going to just twist that one, and then I'm going to twist this side right here. The easiest way to twist it is just to twist the piece in your hand, like this. And now I'm going to bring this wire around here. And I'm going to bring this wire around here. And I know it doesn't add a lot, but I like the extra little flair that it gives it. So now I'm going to leave these back wires for now. And I'm going to work on my little decoration that's going to go on the front. I'm going to take some of my square 21 gauge and I'm just going to cut a little piece of it. And to start, I'm just going to take my round nose pliers and I just want to make a nice little curly Q kind of thing. I just want to make this nice little, I don't know how you would describe it, but I'm trying to turn it kind of loose. Like this. And now I want to trim this wire off, right about here maybe. And I can trim it further if I need to. But I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to go the opposite direction. And I'm just going to twist it. And now I want to twist this one a little bit more. Like that. I'm just going to bend these back wires out of the way for right now. So now I'm going to take this little curly cue that I made, and now I'm just going to take a little tiny piece of 28 gauge wire, and I'm just going to start threading it through this little gap that's in here. And I'm going to thread it around and try to wrap it around a time or two to make sure it's secured. So I'm going to save that little bit longer bit for the piece that I'm attaching, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap this part around. And if I can, I want to wrap it around one more time. And then trim it. There. Now I'm going to trim that little piece of wire. Okay, and that feels smooth. So now I'm going to take my little curly cue that I made, and I'm just going to hold it here, and I want to put it through here and kind of thread it through there. And then I want to thread it. I want to slide this up because I want to thread this wire up in here where those little two wires are, two little wraps are. There, and that wire's coming through the top. So I'm just going to gently pull it. So now I've threaded it through my little curly cue again. And I pulled it up next to the other wrap. There, got it to come up through there. Okay. So I'm just pulling that kind of taut. And I'm going to trim that wire right down at the base. So now I'm going to take another piece of 28 gauge. And I'm going to see where this little piece is going to go. Over here. So I know where I need to connect it at. And I see I need to connect it right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do a full loop around here. So I'm just going to pull that like that. I'm going to wrap it around a couple times just to secure it. So I'm just going to wrap right next to where I pulled it through. But I'm going right above, right to the left of it. So there, I'm holding that with my thumb and just wrapping around one time. I'm going to wrap one more time right above that loop. Okay, so that loop's nice and tight. So I'm just going to trim that piece of wire off and just trimming it so it's nice and down in there and I don't feel anything. These Xuron cutters are great because you can really get down into little tiny gaps. So I really like them for that. So now I'm going to take the other side of my little spiral and I'm going to press these little wraps to the end right there, and I'm going to kind of pull this little weave down a little bit just to give me room to do this. So I'm just going to go ahead and thread this through my spiral and pull it up towards where I want it. And now I'm going to take my wire and it's around my spiral, so I'm just going to take my wire and I'm just going to go up in between where I was coming from before, and I'm going to pull that snugly but not too tight. And now I'm going to fold this around again, and I want to wrap this at least a couple times to secure it really well. So I'm going to thread it through my spiral. And I'm going to spread these out just a little bit, just to give myself some room to get in there. So now I'm going to take that upright just like that. And now I'm going to do that, try to do that again if I can get in there again. So I'm just going to take it through my spiral and pull it with my bent nose pliers. And now I'm going to kind of spread those wraps out, and I'm going to spread the weave apart just a little bit again. And I want to be able to come right up next to that last wrap that I just did. And I will say this side is a little bit easier than the last side. And I'm just going to trim that down as far down as I can get without trimming any other wires that I don't want to trim. And I feel a little rough spot, so I'm just going to kind of press this. And that feels better. So now I'm going to take another piece of my 21 gauge square wire, and I'm going to do what I did with that last spiral. I'm just going to grab it here, and I'm just going to twist it in. And then I'm just going to kind of keep loosely twisting to get that nice spiral shape. Just like that. And now I want to trim this other end. And if I need to trim off more, then I will, but I want to leave myself plenty of room. And then I'm just going to take this piece and I'm just going to spiral it around just gently. I think I want to pull this back down just a little bit, and I want to twist this in just a little bit, and now I want to twist it up. And now I'm going to check it with my piece and figure out how I want it to lay on here. And I think I want it to go like this, and that's actually the perfect size. So I'm just going to spread my weave out just to give me a little bit more room to work with. So I'm just going to stick that through there and pull it through. Let me grab my bent nose pliers. And I'm going to secure this to this piece of the wire. And now I'm going to take this piece and go right above it. I'm going to go right to the left of that, and I'm just threading that through. And now I'm going to thread that through one more time to make sure that wire is nice and secure on there. And I'm just going to push that through and pull that down like that. And now I'm just going to trim this off. I'm going to straighten out my wire with my fingers just a little bit. And I'm going to thread this through here. I'm going to thread this through here. I'm going to pull it with my bit nose pliers. And now I need to get this to come to stay around my wire. And I need it to come up in this narrow gap. And to get this little gap widened a little bit, I'm just going to spread it out. And I'm just going to pull up on that. And now I want to do that at least one more. I think I can get one more wrap in there just to secure it. I'm going to pull these wires up this way, and I'm going to just kind of open up that little gap for me. And I'm just going to thread that through like that. And then I'm just going to trim that off way down in there. And that feels smooth. And now I'm just going to take this and now I'm just going to take another small piece of my 28 gauge wire, and I'm going to figure out where this is going to go, where it's going to connect to. And it connects, looks like it will connect right here. So I'm going to do a couple wraps around right here. Up through there again. I'm just going to open up that gap a little bit just to give myself some more room. Straighten out that wire a little bit. And then have it go up through there. And then I'm just going to trim that off. And now I'm going to attach this other side. Like that. And now I'm going to take this, and I want it to be at an angle. So I'm actually going to thread it up next to the area next to where I just secured the wire to. And actually that was a lot easier. So now I'm going to go around this at least one or two more times to really secure it. So I'm just going to thread that through there. And straighten that out with my fingers. Now I'm going to bend it, and I'm going to go up right next to where I just threaded it through before. Right there. And I want to do that one more time. And now I'm just going to bring this through, and I'm going to thread it up. And then I'm just going to pull this little piece of wire. That wire broke because I had a little bit of a kink in it. I'm just going to tuck this little wire underneath here so it won't stick anybody. But it's pretty secured on there. So this is what we've got so far. Okay, so now that I've gotten the front down, I'm going to work on the back. And so right now I'm just going to kind of sort out my wires and just try to figure out exactly where they need to go. Because I know I kind of at the beginning, I know when I was first starting this pendant, I kind of placed the wires where I wanted them, but they've kind of in the process of getting everything done, they've kind of gotten out of place. So I'm going to pull these two wires up that I pulled up from the front just to kind of give myself a little bit more room to see what I'm doing. So since those are really long, I want those to go straight on the back. And I'm just going to come in here with my wire straighteners and kind of straighten some of these wires out while I do this too. And just place the wires wherever you feel like they should go. Make this your own design. And I believe I want these to be up here. The ones that are attached to the bail, I want to attach up here. And then these that are wrapped around from the front, I want to crisscross them over. And I'm going to put them like that. And so any wire that I feel needs straightened out, I'm just going to go ahead and straighten it. So now what I want to do is I want to trim my wires, and then if they're too long, I can trim them even shorter. But I'd rather have a little bit too much to work with than not enough to work with. So I'm just going to trim these all along here. So you should have something that's looking kind of like this. I'm going to start doing little twists. So I'm just going to take these and I'm just going to start turning these inwards. Like this. And I'm just going to make a little loop. And if for some reason it's too long, then I can trim that little loop. But I want the little loop to attach to the frame. So I'm going to try to keep it as straight as I can and then make the loop. And then I'm going to do that with this one. And I'm just trying to make a little tiny loop on this one because I think I cut it a little bit short. But I'll make it work. So that can go right there against those wires. And then this one can go over here. to hold the stone in, I need these down towards the bottom. And now on this side, I'm going to fold them the opposite direction. That's better. So I'm just going to twist that one in there. And then I'm going to twist this one this way. I'm just grabbing these in the tips of my pliers. And then when I come to each one to secure it, if I feel like it needs to be shortened, then I'll trim it a little bit. But right now it's looking okay. So I'm just trying to move that wire out of the way so I can grab this in the tips of these pliers and just move it like that. So my wires will be placed something like this, wherever they touch the frame. So I'm going to start by securing this one, and I'm just going to work my way around. But before I get to this part, I'm going to add my stone in. Or I'm just going to wrap a little piece of 28 gauge around each loop. Or each wire, just whatever is. I think for this one, I need to trim it just a tiny bit. So I'm just going to trim just a little bit because I want it to meet up with the frame just a little bit better. And it feels like it's too long. So there. That meets up with that. That meets up with that better. And I wanted to press that one flat because it didn't twist completely flat. So I'm just going to take this little piece of wire and I'm just going to run it through my frame here, and then I'm going to run it through the little loop. And I'm going to be using my bent nose pliers to do this, and I'm just going to kind of sew it on there. I think I'm going to give myself just a little bit more wire to work with here. I'm going to straighten it out with my fingers best that I can. And now I'm just going to pull it around. And I'm trying to pull this wire up this way to give me room to wrap this right here. I'm going to get that part pulled through, and then I'm going to put it up through my loop. So now I'm just going to try to come back up through this loop, and I think I want to try to wrap that one more time if I can. And I'm going to use this short wire because I've got a little bit more control with it. So I'm just going to put it through the frame. Put my finger there to keep it from popping back out. That would be good. And I'm going to pull that. And now I'm going to stick it up through my loop. Up through here. Now we'll have to say pieces like this take a lot of patience. So if you don't have a ton of patience, I wouldn't try this. So I'm going to stop that right there, and I'm going to trim that as close as I can get to my loop. And then I'm going to trim this wire down in my frame without cutting any other wires. And that's the nice thing about the Xuron cutters, is you can really get in there like that. And I'm just feeling for any sharpness. And if I feel any sharpness, I'm just going to press it down with my pliers. And I'm just going to kind of flatten that loop out just a little bit. So now I'm just going to take this next wire and it's going to fit perfectly right there. So I'm going to take this piece of wire and work it through. I'm going to pull it through my little loop right there, and then I'm going to take it and I'm going to work it through the frame. And I definitely couldn't do this without these bent nose pliers. I will say that much. So I'm just gonna, I want to wrap this around. Let me pull a little bit longer, and I'll wrap around a couple more times if I can. So I'm just gonna stick that down through there. I know the other side's going to be a little bit harder because I won't have the ability to go through the front of the pendant. So I'm just enjoying this ability while I have it. There. I'm just going to pull that through. And I'm going to put that through my little loop one more time. And while I can, I'm just going to trim these off and have them be on the inside of the frame. Because that just makes everything a lot easier. I'm just going to trim that off right there. And just kind of tuck this little wire. Even though it's not going to scratch anybody, I just want to make sure it's nice and tight around that loop there. I just secured that little wire, and now I'm going to cut this piece of wire off. And I think I'm going to run it through my frame before I cut it off. And I'm just letting it go through in that lower part of the frame wherever I could get it to go through to secure it. So I'm just going to trim this one off on the inside as well. I know I won't be able to do this all the way around, unfortunately. And now I'm going to take this little piece of wire and I'm going to see where this one is going to go. Just pull it over here to the side of the frame, and it looks like it's gonna go right here. So I'm gonna stick it through my little loop and then up through my frame. And I'm just gonna pull that, and then I'm gonna just bring that around again. I'm just gonna pull it through that loop. And then fasten it up through that frame again. So I'm just going to pull that up right there. And I'm just going to trim that off as close as I can get to the frame. And I'm going to trim that off as close as I can get to the back. And now I'm going to feel for any sharpness, and that feels good there. And I do need to press that wire down because that does feel a little bit sharp. And that feels good. And now before I go any further, I want to slip my stone in. And I want to make sure I don't mess up my little areas on the front. But now I want to take this piece right here and I'm going to secure it down here. So I'm just going to put this through my loop. And now I'm going to take my bent nose pliers and I'm just going to fix it to the frame right here. And I see it coming out right there, so I'm just going to see if I can grab that. And it's slipping back out. So I'm just going to grab that and I'm going to pull it. And now I want to slip this through my loop again. And I'm going to pull that like that. And now I'm going to put it down through my frame. I'm going to take this little piece right here. And I'm just going to get it down in that frame. And it's coming out right there, which is actually perfect. And I kind of need to bend this in a little bit so that it's not showing. But I'm going to go ahead and trim that wire down in there. Then I'm going to put this wire down into the frame. And pull it through. Like that. And then I'm just going to trim this right down in there. And that is a great thing about these Xuron pliers. You can get right down where you need to get. So that is something I love about those. Or that's what I love about the Xuron cutters, I mean. And I'm just trying to make sure this is nice and secure. And make sure it's nice and flat. Now I want this wire to come straight down at the bottom. Because, or as close to the bottom as I can get it, because I know this is going to be really important in keeping this stone in. So now I'm just going to put this through my frame because I think it's easier to do that, and it's automatically going through my loop. So I'm just going to grab that with my bent nose pliers, and then I'm going to do that a few more times because I really want this one to be extra secure. And I may even put it into a different area too. I'm going to put it into this one as well. I just really want this to be secure, so I'm going to pull a little bit longer piece to work with. So I'm just going to put that through my frame and hold it with my finger while I grab with my bent nose pliers. And I'm just going to pull with my pliers. Like that. And now I'm just going to take it through my little loop. And I'm trying to do this the easiest way possible, but there's no super easy way to do this. So I'm going to take it through my loop. I'm kind of anchoring this between this piece, between those two areas. So now I'm going to take this through my loop. I'm just going to take this through my loop. And I'm just going to let that come up through the frame. But you're just going to do this all the way around until you get to the end. And now I'm just going to run this down through the frame one more time and then trim it off. So there. So I'm going to trim that piece off. And I'm going to get way down in there. And I don't feel anything sharp. And then this piece, I'm just going to run through that loop. And then trim it off up under that loop. And I'm just going to press that down a little bit. And that feels secure. And I just want to feel my back, make sure everything feels smooth, and it does. And I'm going to adjust my bail. And I'm going to press these down to the stone. So here's our finished pendant. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a long one, and this was a lot of work for this pendant, but I really enjoyed doing it. And I hope you all try something like this and even create your own design on the front. Or you can do this design. This is a very simple little swirl that I just love, these little filigree type swirls. And so that's why I chose that, because I think the filigree swirls are really just kind of elegant. So that's why I chose to do that instead of something different on the front. But of course you can put whatever you want on the front, but this is just the basics on how to get everything secured so everything is fitting right. So this is our finished pendant. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make this filigree pendant. And I love these little filigree swirls, and this was a lot of work, but I think it was really worth it, and I really enjoyed making this pendant. But I think it turned out really nicely, and I'm really super happy with it. And if you try this pendant, let me know. And you can always do a different design on the front. I just like these little filigree swirls because I just think they're kind of pretty and just kind of elegant and simple, and yet it shows off the stone. And then you've got this weaving all the way around for the bezel. And then the back is just like that. And I mean, it's different than a lot of pendants, and you just don't see a lot like this. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I know it was a really long one, but I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. That helps my channel out a lot, and we just hit 600 subscribers, and I am so excited. And when I get to 1,000 subscribers, I have a surprise giveaway. So that's something to definitely look forward to. And also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more jewelry videos, and hit the bell notification button, and leave me a comment down below. Tell me what you're working on, or tell me where you're from. I've had a couple people comment where they're from, but not many, and I would love to know where you're watching from. So just let me know that. If you have any questions at all, please leave those in the comment section below. And if you have any future video requests, please leave that in the comment section below. And I have had a couple video requests, and I've had a lot of video requests on Facebook, so I'm trying to get to all of those, and it's just going to take some time to do all that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.